Is there any pilot on board? Please, anyone who can fly. The co-pilot's scared voice broke through the airplane speakers. His hands were shaking. Flight 2847 was flying at 32,000 feet in the dark sky. The captain had just collapsed. 189 people were on the plane, and they all felt fear. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. It was a quiet Tuesday night. The Boeing 767 was flying from Seattle to Boston. Inside the cabin, everything looked normal. People were reading books, watching movies on small screens, and some were sleeping. The lights were dim to help people rest during the long flight. In seat 23C, a woman sat reading a book. Her name was Sarah Martinez. She looked like any other passenger. She wore a simple gray t-shirt and jeans. Nothing special. Nothing that would make you look twice at her. She was in her mid-40s, with short dark hair. When the flight attendant asked if she wanted wine with dinner, Sarah said no thank you and asked for water instead. She smiled politely and went back to her book. The businessman sitting next to her in seat 23B tried to make small talk. First time to Boston? He asked. No, I've been there before, Sarah replied with a small smile. She didn't say much more. She seemed like a quiet person who just wanted to read her book and reach her destination. But Sarah was not an ordinary passenger. She had a secret. A secret that even the people sitting right next to her could never guess. In the cockpit, Captain Tom Morrison was talking with his co-pilot, Brad Thompson. They were discussing the route and weather. Everything was normal. Captain Morrison was 52 years old and had been flying planes for 25 years. He knew his job well. Then, without any warning, something terrible happened. Captain Morrison reached forward to touch a button on the control panel. Suddenly, his whole body went stiff. His left side stopped working. His hand grabbed the control stick and pulled it forward hard. The plane's nose pointed down. Tom, what's wrong? Brad shouted. He tried to grab the controls, but the captain's body was pushing against them. The plane started diving down. Fast. The numbers on the screen showed them going down, down, down. 31,800 feet. 31, 600 feet. They were losing 2,000 feet every minute. Captain Morrison. Tom. Talk to me. Brad was pulling with all his strength, trying to level the plane. But Morrison's body weight was too heavy. He had collapsed against the controls. Brad pressed the emergency button with his elbow. Within seconds, the senior flight attendant, Jennifer Walsh, opened the cockpit door. She saw what was happening and her eyes went wide. Medical emergency. Captain is down, she shouted back toward the cabin. Lisa, bring the medical kit now. Help me move him, Brad said, his voice tight with panic. I need him away from the controls so I can fly the plane. Jennifer grabbed Captain Morrison under his arms and pulled back hard. The captain was a big man, much heavier than her, but she pulled with all her strength. She managed to drag him back just enough. Brad grabbed the controls properly and pulled. The plane slowly leveled out. They had dropped to 29,300 feet. Get him on the floor. Check if he's breathing, Brad ordered. His voice was shaking but he was trying to stay calm. Another flight attendant, Lisa Martinez, rushed in with the medical emergency kit. She knelt down beside Morrison in the tiny cockpit space. She checked his pulse. She checked his breathing. He's not breathing. Lisa said. Starting CPR now. She began pushing on his chest. 1, 2, 3, 4. Counting out loud. The automated machine said, analyzing heart rhythm. Do not touch the patient. Everyone froze. Shock advised. Stand clear. The electrical shock hit Morrison's body. It jumped. Lisa immediately started pushing on his chest again. Brad was now alone flying the plane. His mind was racing. He had so many things to do at once. Fly the plane, talk to air traffic control, figure out where to land, watch the captain's medical emergency, tell the passengers what was happening, check all the systems, plan the approach to an airport he had never landed at before. It was too much. Way too much for one person. He pressed the radio button. Denver Center, this is United 2847. We have an emergency. The captain is down. He's not breathing. We need to land immediately. What's the nearest airport? The controller's voice came back quickly. United 2847, we copy your emergency. Squawk 7700. You are cleared to Billings International Airport. Emergency vehicles will be ready. How many people are on board? 189 people on board, Brad replied. His hands were sweating. Brad looked at all the buttons and screens in front of him. He looked at Morrison on the floor with Lisa doing CPR. He felt his heart beating fast. He couldn't do this alone. He needed help. Real help from someone who understood flying. He grabbed the microphone for the passenger announcement system. He knew this was against normal rules. Pilots were supposed to keep passengers calm. Never tell them the crew is in trouble. But this was different. This was life or death. Ladies and gentlemen, this is co-pilot Brad Thompson speaking. His voice went through the entire cabin. Every conversation stopped. Every movie paused. Everyone woke up. We have a serious emergency. Our captain has collapsed. He is receiving CPR right now. I am flying the plane and we will land in Billings, Montana. But I need help. If there is any pilot on this plane, military, commercial, cargo, any type of pilot, please identify yourself to the flight attendants immediately. I need someone with flying experience to assist me in the cockpit. This is urgent. We need help now. The cabin exploded with noise. Passengers who were peaceful 1 minute ago now realized their pilot was dying. Their only pilot was asking for help. Parents grabbed their children. Some people started crying. Everyone checked their seatbelts. In seat 23C, Sarah closed her book slowly. She sat still for a moment, thinking. She had been a pilot. A very special kind of pilot. But that was in her past. She had retired 6 years ago to live a quiet, normal life. No uniforms. No attention. Just a regular person. But now, people needed help. And she had the skills to help them. The businessman next to her looked at her with wide, scared eyes. This is really bad, isn't it? The pilot asked for help. They never do that. Sarah nodded. It means he's being honest. That's actually good. It's better than someone who pretends they can handle more than they can. How are you so calm? The man asked. Everyone is scared, but you look completely calm. Sarah didn't answer. She stood up and walked to the front of the cabin. She moved with confidence, not running but walking with purpose. She caught Jennifer Walsh's attention near the front. I can help, Sarah said quietly. I'm a qualified pilot. I heard the co-pilot ask for assistance. Jennifer looked at Sarah carefully. She was trained to read people in emergency situations. Something about Sarah's calm face, her straight posture, her direct eye contact made Jennifer trust her. What's your background? Jennifer asked quickly. Military fighter pilot, Sarah said simply. I'm trained for high-pressure situations. I can help with communications, navigation, and procedures while he focuses on flying. That's what he needs right now. Jennifer made her decision in 2 seconds. Follow me. What's your name? Sarah Martinez. Jennifer led her to the cockpit door and opened it. She leaned inside. Brad, This woman says she's a military fighter pilot. Her name is Sarah Martinez. Should I send her in? Brad looked back desperately. Sweat was running down his face. He was trying to fly the plane and watch the captain and talk on the radio all at the same time. Yes. God, yes. Send her in. I need someone who understands flying. Please. Sarah stepped into the cockpit. She immediately looked at everything and understood the situation in seconds. Captain down, receiving CPR, co-pilot managing controls but overwhelmed, plane stable but needs constant attention, too many tasks for one person. She knew exactly what to do. Divide the work. Let Brad focus only on flying while she handles everything else. Co-pilot Thompson, I'm Sarah Martinez, former military fighter pilot, she said in a calm, strong voice. I'm here to help. You focus only on flying the aircraft. I will handle all communications, navigation, checklists, and coordination. You fly. I'll manage everything else. Tell me what you need. Brad felt like a huge weight lifted off his shoulders. Someone who knew flying was here to help. Oh, thank God, he said. Okay, we're cleared to Billings, descending to 10,000 feet. Emergency services are waiting. I need you to talk to Denver Center on frequency 134.75. I need the approach information for Billings runway 10L. I need someone watching our descent while I focus on flying. Can you do all that? Absolutely, Sarah said. Consider it done. She sat in the jump seat behind Brad and put on a headset. Her hands moved quickly across the communication panel, finding the right frequency. You just fly. I've got everything else, she said confidently. She pressed the radio button. Denver Center, this is United 2847. This is an assisting pilot now handling communications and navigation. The co-pilot is flying the aircraft. I will manage all radio communications and procedures. Confirming emergency status. Requesting current directions and approach clearance for Billings runway 10L. The air traffic controller's voice came back, surprised but professional. United 2847, Denver Center. Confirm you are a qualified pilot providing emergency assistance. Affirmative, military background, qualified in high-performance aircraft, experienced in emergency procedures. I'll coordinate all communications while the co-pilot flies the aircraft. Roger, 2847. Maintain heading 075. Descend and maintain 10,000 feet. Billings weather is currently good, 3 miles visibility. Emergency equipment is standing by. Expect approach to runway 10L. Sarah turned to Brad. Brad, you heard that. Heading 075, descend to 10,000. I'm pulling up the approach information now. How's the aircraft handling? She's flying fine, Brad said. His voice was much calmer now. Fuel is good. All systems normal except, my captain is getting CPR. How is he doing, Jennifer? Jennifer looked up from where she was doing chest compressions. Still no pulse. We've shocked him twice. We're continuing CPR. She didn't finish. Everyone knew. The longer CPR continued, the less chance Captain Morrison had of surviving. Sarah noted this information without emotion. It was another fact in the situation she needed to manage. Understood. Jennifer, continue CPR until we land. Lisa, brief the cabin for emergency landing. Tell them standard procedures. We're landing in Billings in about 20 minutes. Keep them calm but honest. Go. The flight attendants moved immediately. Sarah had a way of giving orders that made people respond instantly. Over the next 15 minutes, Sarah coordinated everything. All communications with air traffic control updated weather information transfer to Billings approach control briefed the flight attendants on landing procedures monitored the descent to ensure Brad maintained proper speed and altitude set up the flight computer for the approach reviewed emergency evacuation procedures kept constant awareness of their position. She never rushed. Never got flustered. She stayed completely calm and professional as she organized every aspect of the emergency except the actual flying. Brad focused entirely on controlling the aircraft. With Sarah managing everything else, he felt confident. Whenever he needed information, Sarah provided it instantly. Her presence transformed an impossible situation into something difficult but manageable. They were 40 miles from Billings, descending through 12,000 feet, when something unexpected happened. A new voice came on the radio. It sounded military, clear and precise. United 2847, this is Raptor Flight. 2 F-22 fighter jets monitoring your emergency. We've been sent to escort you and provide support for your approach. We're at your 5 o'clock position, 5 miles away, level at 12,000 feet. Do you have us in sight? Sarah and Brad both looked right. In the darkness, they saw two sets of lights. The F-22s were flying perfectly steady, matching their exact speed and altitude. Brad pressed the radio button. Raptor Flight, United 2847, we have you in sight. We appreciate the support. Emergency services are ready in Billings. We're established on approach. Copy, 2847. We'll maintain escort through landing. If you need anything, tactical coordination, communications relay, emergency procedure support, we're available. We understand you have an assisting pilot coordinating operations. Sarah realized the F-22 pilots were curious about her. They wanted to know who this assisting pilot was and if she was really qualified. She keyed the radio, keeping her voice professional. Raptor Flight, affirmative. This is the assisting pilot coordinating communications and procedures. Former military aviation, qualified for emergency support. Situation is stable. Co-pilot is flying. All procedures are normal for emergency approach. We appreciate the escort. There was a brief pause. Sarah could imagine the F-22 pilots thinking about former military aviation and wondering about her background. Then the response came, more relaxed. Copy that, 2847. Sounds like you've got things well organized. We'll stay with you until you're safely on the ground. Good to know there's military aircrew aboard helping out. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The fighter pilots had immediately recognized her military training from how she talked on the radio. They went from being concerned to being comfortable that one of their own was coordinating the emergency. Billings approach control cleared them for the final approach to runway 10L. Sarah coordinated the frequency change and briefed Brad on the final approach. Landing checklist complete. Gear down. Flaps 30, Sarah called out, watching the instruments while Brad flew with total concentration. On glide slope, on course, airspeed on target. You're flying a perfect approach, Brad. Keep it coming. Thanks for the help, Brad said. His hands were steady on the controls despite everything that had happened. Behind him, Jennifer was still doing chest compressions on Morrison. She refused to quit, even though everyone knew the chances were getting worse with every minute. 200 feet above decision height. Continue approach, Sarah called. 100 feet, runway in sight. Continue. 50 feet, looking good. Prepare to flare. Brad brought the Boeing across the runway threshold with practiced skill. The main landing gear touched the runway smoothly. He deployed the thrust reversers and brakes, bringing the aircraft to a smooth stop. Sarah coordinated with the tower. Billings Tower, United 2847 is stopped on the runway. Request emergency vehicles approach the aircraft. Captain still receiving CPR. Immediate medical attention required. Roger, 2847. Emergency vehicles are rolling. Remain on runway. Shut down engines when directed. Outstanding job bringing her in safely. Fire trucks and ambulances rushed toward the aircraft with flashing lights. Brad shut down the engines. Paramedics rushed through the forward door, taking over CPR from Jennifer. They loaded Morrison onto a stretcher and rushed him toward the ambulance. In the cabin, passengers burst into applause. That strange reaction when people survive real danger and need to express their relief through noise. Flight attendants managed the orderly exit, directing people toward buses that would take them to the terminal. Brad unbuckled and turned to Sarah with deep gratitude in his eyes. "You saved us. I couldn't have done this alone. I was drowning until you walked into this cockpit and organized everything." "Who are you really?" "Because that was the most professional emergency coordination I've ever experienced." Sarah unbuckled slowly. She suddenly felt tired. Her privacy had ended the moment she stepped forward to help. "I'm exactly who I said. Former military fighter pilot, now retired. I just happened to be on board when you needed help." "Which branch? Which aircraft?" "I'm guessing Navy F-18s from the way you coordinated." She smiled slightly. "Mostly classified, Brad. Let's just say I've had some interesting assignments over the years. What matters is everyone is safe. You did excellent work flying that approach under impossible circumstances." A voice from the open cockpit door interrupted them. "United 2847, this is Captain Marcus Webb, Raptor 2 from your escort flight. Permission to enter the cockpit?" Brad looked surprised. "The F-22 pilots want to meet us." "Apparently," Sarah said, though something in her posture suggested she was suddenly tired of attention. Two pilots in full flight gear climbed the stairs and entered the cockpit. They were tall, fit, and confident, the kind of confidence that comes from flying the world's most advanced fighter jets. Captain Marcus Webb was maybe 35, with "Torch" written on his flight suit. His wingman, Captain Diana Torres with "Blade" on her suit, was younger, with sharp, intelligent eyes. They both looked at Sarah with open curiosity. "Co-pilot Thompson, outstanding flying, sir," Webb said, shaking hands with genuine respect. "You did everything right on that approach. Textbook emergency handling." "Thank you, Captain, but honestly, I couldn't have done it without her." Brad gestured toward Sarah. "She coordinated everything: communications, navigation, procedures, flight attendant coordination. She freed me up to focus entirely on flying. She's former military aviation but wouldn't tell me much beyond that." Webb and Torres both turned to Sarah with sudden intense interest. "Former military aviation?" Webb said. "Which service?" "We heard you on the radio and figured military background from the way you communicated." "Very professional." Sarah could see where this was going. Her carefully kept privacy was about to end. But these were fighter pilots who had helped escort the emergency. They deserved honest answers. "Air Force fighter pilot, retired now. I happened to be on board as a passenger when the captain collapsed." "Which base were you at?" Torres asked. "Which aircraft?" "Various assignments, multiple aircraft types, mostly classified work. I prefer to keep specifics private if that's okay." Webb studied her carefully. Fighter pilots were trained to read people and situations quickly. "Ma'am, I don't mean to pry, but that level of coordination doesn't come from flying routine missions. The way you managed that emergency, the command presence, the tactical precision, the situational awareness, that's someone with serious operational experience. Would I be wrong in guessing you've seen combat?" Sarah met his eyes steadily. "You wouldn't be wrong, but I'd still prefer to keep the specifics private. Some things stay classified even after you retire." Torres glanced at Webb with an expression that suggested they had discussed this during the escort flight. "Ma'am, what's your call sign? If you don't mind us asking." The cockpit went very quiet. Brad looked confused, not understanding why a call sign mattered. Sarah felt the weight of the question. She knew that revealing her call sign would end any remaining privacy. Would trigger instant recognition among pilots who studied advanced tactics. Would expose the legendary status she had carefully hidden for years. But these were fellow warriors who provided professional escort during the emergency. They deserved an honest answer. She took a slow breath, then spoke the word that would change everything. Phoenix. The reaction was immediate and shocking. Both F-22 pilots went completely silent. Their faces transformed from casual curiosity to absolute shock. Webb's mouth literally fell open. Torres stopped breathing. The cockpit became frozen as two of the world's most elite fighter pilots processed the name they just heard. Their brains were struggling to connect the quiet woman standing before them with the legendary call sign that every fighter pilot in the world knew. Brad looked between them, confused. What? What's Phoenix? Why do you both look like you've seen a ghost? Webb found his voice first, though it came out rough with emotion. Phoenix. Operation Desert Storm, 1991. 12 kills in one mission. Single-handedly protected an entire bomber group from enemy fighters, created defensive maneuvers that we still study at weapons school, tactical innovations that are still classified. One of the most legendary fighter pilots in history, that Phoenix. Sarah said nothing. She just met his stunned gaze with quiet acknowledgement. Torres made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Oh my God. We just escorted Phoenix through an emergency landing. We coordinated with Phoenix on radio frequencies. We've been studying your tactics for years. Your engagement in Desert Storm is the first thing they teach at weapons school for air-to-air combat. You're the legend. The actual legend. And you were just sitting as a passenger on a commercial flight. I do occasionally travel on commercial airlines, Sarah said dryly. Hard to take an F-22 to visit family in Boston. Webb shook his head slowly, still processing. Ma'am, when you said former military aviation, that was possibly the greatest understatement in history. Phoenix. Jesus. Torres, do you realize we just flew escort for Phoenix? That we're standing in a cockpit with Phoenix? That we coordinated emergency procedures with literally one of the most legendary fighter pilots alive? Brad was staring at Sarah with dawning understanding. Wait, you're famous. You're some kind of fighter pilot legend? The legend, Torres corrected firmly. Not some kind, the legend. If you asked every fighter pilot in the world to name the one person they most admire, most respect, most want to fly like, a huge percentage would say Phoenix. She's who we all study, who we all try to copy, the standard we measure ourselves against. And she's been sitting in seat 23C reading a book like she's just a regular passenger. Sarah felt the familiar discomfort of having her privacy shattered. I am just a regular passenger. I retired 6 years ago. I read books and visit family and live a quiet civilian life. The person who flew that mission in Desert Storm doesn't exist anymore. She's just a name in classified files. With respect, ma'am, that's not how legends work, Webb said quietly. What you accomplished doesn't fade just because you retired. Those 12 kills, those tactical innovations, that impossible victory, they're studied, analyzed, copied by every fighter pilot who wants to survive combat. Your call sign means something. It represents achievement that goes beyond individual missions. You're Phoenix. That name matters. An airline supervisor appeared at the cockpit door with a tablet in hand. Co-pilot Thompson, I need to debrief the emergency for our report. Also, there are some military officials here who want to speak with you and... He glanced at Sarah, the passenger who provided cockpit assistance. They're being quite insistent about speaking with her specifically. Webb and Torres exchanged glances. They monitored the radio traffic, Webb said. Heard her call sign. Word is spreading through military channels that Phoenix coordinated a civilian emergency from a commercial cockpit. Everyone's going to want to meet her, debrief her, thank her. Ma'am, your privacy just ended pretty completely. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, accepting it. Her quiet civilian life had lasted exactly 6 years before circumstances forced her to reveal herself. But people had lived because she stepped forward. That mattered more than privacy. Let's go talk to whoever needs debriefing, she said calmly. Brad, you should rest. You flew an excellent approach under impossible circumstances. You should be proud. Brad grabbed her arm gently. Wait. Before we go deal with officials and debriefings, I need to say this. You saved 189 people tonight, including me. I was drowning until you walked into that cockpit and organized everything. I don't care if you're a legend or just someone who happened to know how to help. You saved us. Thank you. Sarah met his eyes and saw genuine gratitude there. You're welcome, Brad. You did the hard part. I just coordinated. No, Webb interrupted firmly. With respect, ma'am, you did what you always do. You assessed an impossible situation, organized chaos into structure, provided leadership and expertise that transformed disaster into survival. That's what Phoenix means. That's what you represent. They descended from the aircraft to find the terminal area transformed. Airline personnel, airport officials, military liaisons, and what appeared to be reporters had all gathered. Sarah noticed several Air Force uniforms, including a colonel who straightened sharply when he saw her. His face showed recognition despite never having met her. The colonel approached with military precision, saluting despite her civilian clothes. Colonel David Park, Malmstrom Air Force Base. Ma'am, I monitored the radio traffic during your emergency coordination. When I heard your call sign, ma'am, it's an honor. A profound honor. On behalf of the United States Air Force and every fighter pilot who has studied your tactics, thank you for your service and for your extraordinary assistance today. Sarah returned the salute automatically. Old habits. Thank you, Colonel. I just happened to be on board when help was needed. Ma'am, nothing you do is, just happened, Park said with conviction. Your presence transformed what could have been a disaster into textbook emergency management. The co-pilot credits you with saving everyone on board. The F-22 pilots say your coordination was the most professional they've experienced. Your Phoenix, excellence follows you even in civilian circumstances. A reporter pushed forward eagerly, camera operator filming. Ms. Martinez, is it true you're a legendary fighter pilot? Can you confirm you're the pilot known as Phoenix who achieved 12 kills during Desert Storm in 1991? Can you comment on how it felt to coordinate today's emergency? Do you consider yourself a hero? Sarah felt the familiar weight of public attention. The transformation from private person to public figure that she'd carefully avoided for 6 years. But denying facts seemed pointless when military officials were saluting her, when F-22 pilots were standing nearby confirming her identity. I'm former Air Force, she said carefully. I provided emergency assistance during today's crisis because I had relevant experience. The real credit belongs to co-pilot Thompson who flew an excellent approach under impossible circumstances, and to the flight attendants who provided medical care and passenger coordination. I just helped organize communications and procedures. But you're Phoenix, the reporter pressed. The famous fighter pilot, the legend. She met the camera directly, her voice quiet but firm. I'm Sarah Martinez. I served my country for 23 years. I flew missions that remained classified. I retired 6 years ago to live quietly as a civilian. Today, I happen to be on board an aircraft where I could help during an emergency. That's all this is. Someone with relevant experience helping during a crisis. It's what any qualified person should do. Torres stepped forward, her voice carrying absolute conviction. With respect, ma'am, you're being far too modest. I've studied every detail of your mission in Desert Storm. I've analyzed your tactical innovations. I've tried to copy your decision-making processes. What you accomplished represents the absolute peak of fighter pilot achievement. Your call sign is legendary for good reason. And today, you prove that excellence doesn't fade with retirement. You organized this emergency with the same tactical precision that characterized your combat operations. You're Phoenix. That name means something. Webb added, "Ma'am, there are maybe 500 F-22 pilots in the entire world. We're supposed to be the elite. But every single one of us studies your tactics. Every single one of us tries to think the way you think, coordinate the way you coordinate, manage complex situations the way you manage them. You're not just former Air Force. You're the standard we measure ourselves against." Your call sign stops conversations because everyone knows what it represents. Today just demonstrated that those abilities remain extraordinary even in civilian life. Sarah felt the weight of their words. Her carefully kept privacy had ended completely. Becoming Phoenix again meant accepting public recognition of achievements she'd spent years trying to leave behind. But looking at Brad's grateful face, at the passengers who had gotten off the plane safely, at the military professionals standing with deep respect, she understood that some responsibilities went beyond personal preference for privacy. "Fine," she said quietly. "Yes, I'm Phoenix. Yes, I flew the Desert Storm mission and numerous other classified missions. Yes, my tactics are studied in military schools. And yes, I provided emergency coordination today because people needed help and I had relevant experience." That's what the call sign has always meant. Not personal glory or legendary status, but the responsibility to use exceptional abilities to protect people. Today was just another example of that responsibility. Nothing heroic, just competence during a crisis. Colonel Park shook his head slowly. "Ma'am, with respect, you don't get to define whether you're heroic. The 189 people who are alive today because you organized that emergency, they get to define that. The fighter pilots who survived combat because they learned your tactics, they get to define that. You're Phoenix. Your call sign represents something bigger than your personal modesty. It represents hope that impossible situations can be managed through expertise and courage and brilliance. That matters. You matter." Later that night, Sarah sat in her hotel room and looked at her reflection in the mirror. For 6 years, she'd been just Sarah Martinez, civilian, invisible, unremarkable. Tonight, she'd become Phoenix again. Her call sign spoken aloud. Her achievements recognized publicly. Her abilities revealed to a world that would never again see her as just another passenger. Part of her felt sad about losing that privacy. But a larger part understood that some responsibilities went beyond personal comfort. That having exceptional abilities created an obligation to use them when circumstances required it. That being Phoenix meant accepting that her expertise would always be needed when situations went beyond normal capacity. Her phone buzzed with text messages from former squadron members who'd seen news coverage. From military officials expressing gratitude. From pilots she'd never met thanking her for today's help and for years of tactical inspiration. She responded briefly to each message, accepting their gratitude while keeping her responses modest and professional. A knock on her door. Colonel Park stood there holding coffee. "Ma'am, may I have a few minutes?" Sarah let him in. "Colonel, I'm retired. You don't need to keep calling me ma'am." "Sarah is fine. With respect, Phoenix, you'll never be just Sarah to military professionals," Park said seriously. "Your call sign carries too much weight. Represents too much achievement. Every person who met you tonight left that interaction inspired. You don't understand the impact your legend has on people who've tried to reach your standards." "I'm just human, Colonel," Sarah said tiredly. "I have abilities that helped in specific situations, but I also have limitations. The legend of Phoenix makes people expect impossible things from me." Park shook his head firmly. "Ma'am, what you accomplished wasn't just natural ability. It was tactical genius combined with courage combined with leadership that inspired others to perform beyond their normal abilities. And today represented the same excellence in a different context, same abilities, different circumstances. That's why your call sign matters. It represents an approach that succeeds regardless of the specific situation. After Park left, Sarah sat in the darkness thinking about his words. He was right. She'd been blessed to have abilities that let her serve at exceptional levels. And those abilities created an obligation to keep serving even when she preferred privacy. Being Phoenix meant understanding that legends were built from human moments. The decision to step forward when the co-pilot needed help, the willingness to coordinate chaos into structure. The tactical precision applied to a civilian emergency. Today hadn't been about maintaining legendary status. It had been about seeing people who needed help and having the ability to provide that help. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Torres: "Ma'am, tonight was the privilege of my career. Flying escort for Phoenix, coordinating with a legend whose tactics I study daily, witnessing your excellence in a civilian emergency. That's something I'll tell my grandchildren. You inspire us through consistent demonstration that excellence matters regardless of circumstances. Thank you. Blade sends her respect." Sarah typed a brief response: "Torres, thank you for professional escort tonight. You and Webb demonstrated excellent tactical support during a complex situation. Keep studying, keep improving, keep pushing boundaries. Excellence isn't a destination. It's a continuous journey. You're on the right path." Phoenix sends her respect. She set her phone aside and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she'd continue to Boston. She'd visit family who would understand that Mom's quiet civilian life had ended when circumstances required revealing legendary abilities. The future would bring media attention, speaking requests, military consultations. All the obligations that followed from being Phoenix revealed publicly after years of careful privacy. But tonight, she'd saved 189 people. Had coordinated an emergency requiring tactical precision she'd developed through decades of service. Had proven that excellence went beyond specific circumstances, had demonstrated to a new generation of fighter pilots that being a legend meant accepting responsibility to serve whenever expertise could prevent disaster. Phoenix meant something. It meant a warrior who stepped forward when situations exceeded normal capacity. It meant a tactician who organized chaos into manageable structure. It meant a leader who inspired others through competence rather than words. That was the truth of legendary call signs. They weren't built through publicity. They were built through consistent demonstration that excellence matters. That expertise serves. That abilities create obligation to help when circumstances require someone who can perform at extraordinary levels. Tonight, F-22 pilots had heard her call sign and gone silent with shock because they understood they were coordinating with someone whose achievements exceeded their own impressive accomplishments. Tomorrow, military professionals worldwide would learn that Phoenix had coordinated a civilian emergency with the same tactical precision that made her combat missions legendary. But for Sarah, tonight was simply another example of the same principle that had guided her entire career: when people need help and you have the ability to provide that help, you step forward regardless of personal cost. That's what service means. That's what excellence requires. That's what Phoenix represents. She fell asleep peacefully, knowing her privacy had ended, but 189 people had lived tonight. And that mattered more than anonymity. That was why her call sign stopped F-22 pilots cold. Not because of arrogance, but because of consistent demonstration that when Phoenix appeared during a crisis, people survived who otherwise wouldn't. That legend was built through service, tested through combat, proven through consistent excellence across decades. Tonight had just added another chapter to a story that military professionals would study for generations. Analyzing how a legendary fighter pilot coordinated a civilian emergency from a commercial cockpit with the same tactical precision that had made her name legendary throughout military aviation communities worldwide. Phoenix had returned. And 189 people were alive because she had.